Hello everyone, welcome to the Sky Sports F1 podcast with me, Matt Baker. I hope you're well. Joining me to discuss all things Max Verstappen, I'm joined by former F1 driver, Dutch broadcaster now, Giedo Van der Garde, as well as Formula One content creator and Max Verstappen fan, Tom Bellingham. Hello to you both. Tom, I'm going to start with you because you are joining us still in Amsterdam. You weren't supposed to be in Amsterdam today, were you?
We were not. No, we've been stranded by the UK situation, but there's worse places to be, so yeah, it's been all right.
It certainly is. There certainly is. Giedo, how was your weekend? You're obviously working for Viaplay.
I'm still knackered. I have to say, it was flat out. We had from Wednesday onwards, we were really, really flat out from 9 o'clock in the morning actually to 10 o'clock and sometimes even 11 o'clock in the evening. At the moment we are working for Viaplay. It's something really cool to do in Holland. The Formula One is huge at the moment, especially with Max Verstappen. So we went with the broadcaster flat out every day, many hours. But we got a very good feedback from the last weekend, so everybody was happy what we made.
Yeah, and you also, you delivered, I think, one of my favourite bits of telly for the whole weekend when you were doing the interviews after the race, and you said to Alonso, were you going to go after Max in those last few laps? And he said, no, I want to leave the track. What do you? It was. I thought it was like overall a really good race, Giedo, and I think it kind of was reflected, wasn't it, after the race? All the drivers, I'm guessing, really enjoyed that. It was a really challenging but good race to be a part of.
No, I think we were very, very lucky. First of all, with the weather. I think, before the race, it was sunshine. The grid walk was easy. Everybody was relaxed. All the people could come on. And then suddenly in lap 1, it started to rain. Actually, what we hoped for, because it makes the race much more entertaining than instead of Max starting first, goes away, and that's it. And now with the first guys who did the early pit stops, Checo was leading by 11 seconds. Then Max had to do the catch-up. And what you said, everybody loved it. Everybody was so happy with the entertainment. Everybody was happy with the race outcome. As you said, Alonso, I think the interviews we had with him after the race, he was smiling. Pierre was smiling. He was so happy. So I was lucky in that way that I could do the interviews and that they opened up and that they also were telling that about that he was not thinking about passing Max because he could not exit the track. It's cool to hear that. And there's a lot of respect for the guys because it was not an easy race.
Tom, what did you make of the race? I was just chatting to you before about maybe F1, the last few races, we needed that, right? After the summer break, to come back with a race that exciting, that eventful. It was brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really good. Like Giedo said, the rain fell at the perfect time, really, because when you felt the rain in the air, I was worried which can happen with Formula One now, where it might rain at the start and then we get a delayed start and then, they wait for it to dry out a bit. But it was very cool to have the race start and then the rain came down, and it was that challenging moment where you have to choose, do you stay out and brave it? Do you go for the inters? And yeah, we like we said, we were due a very good race, even though we got the same outcome, and Max obviously equaling that record. And it's amazing that the race was just so entertaining. And F1 fans, we needed that very much so.
Yeah, definitely. So what I want to do over the course of this podcast really is use both of your experience. Obviously, Tom, you're been a fan of Max, and Giedo, you've known Max for a long time, and just try to understand what he's doing at the moment. He got his 9th win in a row this weekend, which is an extraordinary achievement that equaled Sebastian Vettel's record. He's going for 10 this weekend in Monza, which will be the all-time record. So I want to understand how he's got to this point. But before I do, I do want to continue just talking a bit about the race. And I guess, Giedo, it was a really good race in the sense of it just proves how good Max is, because he could deal with the safety cars, the rain, two massive deluges of rain, the red flag, and all of this was happening. And if we're honest about it, it probably was never in doubt, was it, that he would end up finishing first from that race?
Well, after a second lap, I didn't know, because the gap between Perez and Max was quite big, but you could see straight away the head goes down. You see him getting angry and putting lap times that nobody could, making the gap from, I think, 11, 12 seconds suddenly was like 3 seconds. The pace he had was just amazing. I think As you said before, the driver, Max at the moment, has so much confidence. He feels so one with the car, one with the team, his engineer, the way they talk, the way they do things, the way they set up the car, the way they handle the radio on the during the race, the feedback they give each other. It's just amazing. It looks like they are a married couple, and that they are performing on their best at the moment. And I think it was nice to see that Max was, even though with a lot of pressure from the fans, 100,000 people a day is coming. They want to see him win. Raining, a lot of music, the pressure. The king was there. Everybody wants to have a quote. Everybody wants to have an autograph, a picture with him. That he stays so cool, and I think that's his strength at the moment. That he has overcapacity than more than any other driver to think about different things in the race, to think about strategy, to think about the setup, to think about what the best lines are, what's happening on the weather. It just amazed me how good he is at the moment.
Do you agree, Tom, that he's just performing at a level that is just superior to anyone else on the grid, basically?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the confidence that he has in not just himself, but, the team as well. Obviously, yes, he's got a very good car underneath him, but, he's matched a record that I personally thought might never be never be broken. You wouldn't put it past him breaking it because, we've seen dominant cars in the past, but he's only the second driver that's ever got 9 wins in a row. And it just shows that he is just driving so well. And like you said, no matter what a race throws at him now, we've seen in these races, it's not just him starting on pole and winning every race. Sometimes he's had a penalty and he's started further back and he still wins, or something, the change in the weather. I mean, like Giedo said, that, he just stayed so calm and cool in such a chaotic race. And I also thought, when Checo was about 12 seconds up the road after making the call earlier, I was kind of like, well, surely this is Checo's race win. It's going to be a big ask. And then you remember that actually in these wet to dry conditions, Max almost is actually even more superior because that's the conditions that he likes. And he's shown that time and time again and did again in the race.
I thought that first lap was really interesting in terms of because obviously it's a short lap at Zandvoort, the decision to go on to a different set of tyres, to either the intermediates or the wets, that decision had to be made really quickly. So whose responsibility is it ultimately to make that decision? You sat on the grid as a driver, the rain's coming. After that first lap, there's obviously got to be a cut-off point, hasn't there, between where you go, no, we have to make a decision now, otherwise it's too late.
Well, I think it's a decision for both. Mostly when it goes from slicks to wets, it's a decision from the engineer and the team, because they see the radar coming, they see how much rain is coming, how long the rain will stay on track. And the other way around, I think when you go from rain until to slicks, is more call of the driver, because they see the dry line, they feel what's happening on track. But in this decision, it was really, really hard, because the first part of the lap, on lap 1, it was dry until they came chicane and turn 13, where it started to rain really, really hard. And actually, I think Perez just guessed it right, and Joe guessed it right, and I think Leclerc also guessed it right, because they had like a very, very poor first lap. So they had nothing to lose. So they said, okay, the rain is coming, boom, let's go in, and then we see what happened. And I think Perez did a very, very good call. Joe did a very good call, because they were 1 and 2 after a couple of laps. But it's a very tough decision. I mean, if you're leading and you're second, third, or fourth, and the rain is coming only in the last corner, what do? You stay out, because the rest of the track is dry. But then it started to be, a lot of rain. Then you have to come in because you are a passenger.
Yeah, it was very interesting. There's been some fascinating team radio that's emerged, definitely from that opening lap. It's pretty hairy. Okay, I just want a word on the event as well, because I've got a few questions from people at home. One of them, Tom, is actually for you, from Kakatoko on Twitter. Said, how was the VIP experience at the Dutch Grand Prix? Because obviously you were there in 2021 as well. I don't know if you were also VIP in 2021, but how was the experience of doing that?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate that I've done 2 Dutch Grand Prix, and the first year we got to experience being in the grandstand opposite the main straight, obviously Max winning that as well. a lot more flares that year, and a lot of techno and stuff like that. It was a very cool experience. You know, I've never been to a Formula One race where it felt like you were a football game, or you know, even a music festival or something. You know, it was constant cheering and chanting and stuff, which was a really cool experience. And then, yeah, this year we were very lucky that we actually on the Sunday we had a guest pass from Daniel Ricciardo, which was a bit unusual because he wasn't there. So thankfully we managed to get the passes before his injury, but we still obviously were able to get into the paddock even though his team had gone home, which obviously very sad and unfortunate for them. But yeah, we had an amazing experience. That's the first time ever that I've been under the podium. Red Bull let us go under the podium at the end. Never experienced that before. And me and Matt, my colleague at P1, yeah, we were, you know, as fans living the dream where we were like under the podium just trying to literally soak it all in, because Fernando was spraying the champagne over us and stuff. It was amazing. Like, it was so good. It felt very surreal to be on the other side where, you know, you're watching the drivers come into Parc Ferme and stuff. It was so cool.
Incredible experience. And actually, I mean, it was my first time in Zandvoort, and I just thought what an amazing event it was. So well organised, and the viewing spots around the track. You know, I had my dad with me this weekend. You met Tom, and he was saying, you know, there are just so many places around the track that you can see, and it's, you know, I mean, it's pretty reasonable value as well. Like, it was just a great race. And also, Giedo, I was going to say, what an amazing stat that I think it was between 97 and 98% of people arrived at the track by sustainable transport, whether that's on bike, on a train, or by walking. I mean, you guys know how to put on a good event, don't you? That's incredible.
Well, yeah, I think we can be proud on that we have such an event in Holland. You can see that the Dutch people, they like to party, like to have a good time. I say it's like one of a family festival what's going on in Zandvoort, because every year they like people want to come, want to see the race, of course, want to see Max winning, but the entertainment around the track, with the music, with the DJs, with the singers, with André Rieu, who is doing the national anthem, it just amazes me every year. It's like you're getting goosebumps when you're standing there. It's like, you know, I have to say I'm a very proud Dutchman at the moment, because we can put something in Zandvoort. I think 5-6 years ago, we never thought we would be able. So I think the team, and I think special Bernard van Oranje, who's the owner of the track, they did an amazing job with their team to put an event like this, and every year to amaze people that it is just a big event. I even asked Fernando Alonso, because, you know, you have the red flag, you're standing there with your car in the pit lane, and suddenly all the people around you hear big music, they start to scream, dance, go crazy. And suddenly, like 15 minutes later, you have to put the helmet back on, and you're like, okay, am I in a discotheque, or I have to go racing? You know, it's just crazy. And ask him this, he said, yeah, well, you know, once you put the helmet on, you're back in the game again.
You just have to basically keep in the zone, right? You know, ignore everything that's going on around you. And it was loud on the grid just before you know, they ramped up the music. Just, I mean, you couldn't hear anyone think. I don't think Nat could hear. She did an interview with Steve Carell on the front of the grid. I don't think they could hear each other. It was ridiculously loud. Okay, that's sort of, I mean, it brings us on nicely to talk about Max Verstappen, because obviously one of the main reasons that we've got the Dutch Grand Prix, why we've gone back to Zandvoort, is because of Max and obviously his success. And yeah, as I said in the intro, I want to get into and understand how he's got to this point. And Giedo, I thought you'd be a brilliant person to ask about this. You've known him for a long time. Take me back to the first time you came across the name Max Verstappen. How did that all come about?
When he born. Well, I mean, I knew Jos from a very young age. I used to race actually in his go-kart team when I was 15, 16 years old. I was younger, even 13. So I met him. I was racing for Jos Verstappen Racing. Then I moved on. He went to do Formula One. And then actually in 2002, he got paid off his contract in Formula One. I had him on the phone in December, in January. He said, well, can I help you out regarding coaching, regarding engine tuning for the last year you do in go-kart? So we started away. He started to tune my go-kart engines. I think it was a very, very successful year. I lived more or less half at his place in Belgium, and Max at that time was 3-4 years old. I was sleeping in Max's bed. Max was sleeping with Jos. In the evening, we were playing PlayStation together with Max because he was still young. But when he was losing, he was even trying to throw the controller away. He was angry. He was already very passionate about racing. He saw his dad and me going to the go-kart. He even went to some races. And the funny thing, on the end of the year, I won the World Championship with Jos, which was a very fun, wonderful year. The engines were flying. And on that time, it was, I think, October, November, Max jumped in for the first time in a go-kart in Genk. And I was part of that. So, then what is it, 22 years later, 23 years later, we have nearly three times world champion. And from the beginning of on, the Max has something special in his eyes, the way he does things, the confidence, the way he plays with the car, the way he races. I always say it's a bit of dancing, you know. I mean, when I see him dance, it looks a bit strange. But when I see him racing, it's just so much control. It's just unbelievable.
Tom, I was going to ask what your first memory of Max is, but you're probably not going to match Guido's.
No.
It's going to be whatever it is. It's probably not going to be quite as impressive as knowing him the moment he was born. But can you pinpoint a moment as a fan when you first came across him and you first started to become aware of what he was doing in the junior categories?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually, as a kid, had weird fascination with the Dutch national team, like football, and I don't know why. It was maybe just the bright orange, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then when Jos was driving, he was driving for Arrows, and it was, you know, like an orange car, and being like, however old I was, like 7 or 8, I was just like, oh, that's cool, I like that. So then when I heard that, you know, Verstappen, the son of him was driving and going to be in Formula 3, you know, I'd heard amazing things that, you know, he was going to be an exciting driver. And I think I watched some of the races he was doing in Formula 3, and he was very much the kind of driver that I like. I've grown up liking the drivers that are, you know, like Montoyas and people like that aren't afraid to make a bold overtake and are exciting on the track. And I remember actually thinking, so it would have been, I think in 2014 he was in F3, and I was like, right, I'm going to support Max, I'm going to follow his career up until Formula 1, and then I'll be this like hipster fan that's known him for ages. And then the reality was he was so good at F3 that he was in F1 the very next year.
Yeah.
I didn't get to watch that journey going up in the junior categories, but it was a big surprise because I actually used to freelance work for Red Bull, so I actually knew that he was going to get that Toro Rosso seat and the big announcement for it. So that was also really exciting, and yeah, it was a crazy thing to happen at the time. You know, 17-year-old kids coming to F1, and I think there was quite a lot of maybe backlash that he was going to come in, and you know, he's far too young. It's ridiculous that he's coming into Formula 1, and actually, you know, he's here doing incredible things in F1 now.
Certainly is. Yeah, Giedo, what do you remember of that period when he first arrived in Formula 1? Obviously, the youngest driver to start a Formula 1 race, then the youngest driver to win a Formula 1 race. He certainly was noticed, wasn't he, very early on in his career?
I think already in go-kart, you saw that he was spectacular. You know, he was doing things on a very young age, winning championship, European, World Championship. And of course, from that time to go from go-kart to a race car, it's a bit different. You know, it takes a little bit of time, but he was doing a test in England with MP Motorsport for the first time in Formula Renault car, and I had Jos on the phone. He said, I don't know what's happening, but in the rain he's like 1 second quicker than a guy he's already 1 year. And he was the first morning in the rain in the race car. He said, this is unbelievable what's happening here. So that was the first time I heard already amazing stories. Of course, like Tom said, when he F3, he was spectacular. First time I remember him in a Formula 1 car. He was in a test, in free practice 1 in Japan. At that time, I was the reserve and the third driver of Sauber. In 2014 it was. And it was, you know, when he jumped in, the way that he was doing the lines, the way of the confidence he had already, all the press was there. There were like 100 photographs making pictures in front of the garage, and he stayed so cool. He was like, I jump in, I do my thing, and he was straight away quick. And yeah, I think from the beginning onwards, when he jumped in a race car, was spectacular. When he jumped in a Formula One car, he has something magic, and he only knows one thing, and that's racing, and he's doing it all his life. Even when he's home, he's on the simulator playing things. Even when he has a winter break or 1 month doing nothing, he goes with his father with the Porsche GT3 on track having fun. He's just, he lives and breathes racing.
You mentioned his father there, Giedo. I mean, how much of what he was doing early on in his career do you think has helped him now? I'm recalling all the stories of him, helping him to learn how to drive in the wet conditions, or going through all these scenarios that he might experience in the future in Formula One or wherever it was going to be, and just preparing him, allowing him to be the best driver he could possibly be when it mattered most.
I think Jos is the most important guy in his career. What happened until now? I think as I worked with Jos as well, he's hard, he's tough. He has the experience. He's been racing himself in go-kart, in race cars, Formula One, a couple of years. So he knows everything about the sports. And to guide your son through that, it's something really amazed me, that how he did it and how much of a passion, commitment he gave to Max. And that's been unreal. I think a lot of people doesn't know the background stories, but he gave everything what he had to put Max in Formula One. And they still work together, Jos still gives advice, and they still speak about the car, the setup, the procedures, the things what has to be done. And I think Jos made he made some mistakes in his career, and I think he learned Max to not do the mistakes in his career. And I think, the combination Max and Jos is just perfect. And I have a lot of respect for Jos, and also the whole management and his mother and his sister, because it hasn't been easy, but he's nearly 3 times world champion, so that's also for Jos.
Tom, what do you think? I mean, you alluded to it with what you liked about him in terms of referencing Montoya and that kind of go for everything attitude. How do you think fans have warmed to Max Verstappen's style? What is it about his style that makes fans enjoy what he does on track?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of those characters that some of his moves on track, you can have a love or hate relationship with it, because when you get those aggressive drivers, they are controversial, but it's something a lot of people love as well. And I think you could see it straight from when he was Toro Rosso. I think it was around the outside at Spa. He put an unbelievable move. I think it was on Felipe Nasser at Spa, and it was these kind of things that you were like, wow. And if you can stand out in a car that's, can only really manage 10th place or 11th place or whatever, it just showed how good he was going to be the one day, he did get a good car. And obviously when he did make that switch to Red Bull, he ended up winning his very first race as well, which was absolutely a crazy thing to happen after all the controversy. And I think, like Guido's alluded to, it's almost he just seems so cool about it, and nothing really seems to faze him. And I think that's why we're seeing that level of dominance now, really.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't seem to be that fazed by the records that he's continually breaking week on week. Giedo, can you pinpoint a time when the Dutch fans truly fell in love with him? Was there a moment or a win? When did Max Mania, in inverted commas, start?
I think when I got kicked out of Formula One.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. No, I think, it's... I think from the beginning onwards, when he jumped in Formula One in 2015, as Tom mentioned, the passes he made, he was spectacular. There was something new. He was fire. He was young. He made Formula One spectacular again, because on that time maybe it was a little bit boring. And with Max Verstappen, there was always something going on, and there was passes and crazy races. And what you said, he went from Toro Rosso to Red Bull, started to win the race. It was like, wow, what's happening here? And even in Holland that time, everybody was like, football and other sports. And suddenly, I think since his first win, it really started to explode in Holland. And you see now it's the 3rd time in a row in Zandvoort we have a race. It's fully packed every day. The merchandise goes crazy. Everybody in orange. If I even on the street in Amsterdam, I go to the butcher to buy my steak for the night. They're crazy. How was it? Cool. It's just about it really is huge at the moment. And as one guy asked me last week, and in the time we had like Johan Cruyff was the biggest athlete in Holland, but I think now Max is probably maybe bigger than Johan Cruyff.
What other Formula One drivers have this level of fandom? I guess you could look at perhaps our younger crop of drivers like Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc. They've got huge followings, but perhaps not maybe a national following of just one country that seems to adore them so much. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think that is probably part of it as well. In the UK, we've been very fortunate to have a lot of world champions come through, and of course, when Hamilton got into Formula One and was successful straight away, F1 definitely grew to a point, but it was a successful sport and exciting anyway. But yeah, I'd probably a comparison, maybe one I could think of as maybe Fernando Alonso, that Spain had never had a Formula One race winner before, and Fernando came in and suddenly started challenging Michael Schumacher for race wins and then world championships, and suddenly Formula One exploded there. And I think you've seen that with the Netherlands even more. I like you mentioned at the start of the show, I'm stuck in Amsterdam for a couple of days, and you walk around and you still see, like, even in Amsterdam, like Max Verstappen pictures on the wall or in shops and stuff. So it's a huge thing over there, because they've now got this huge star that's, well, he's completely dominating the sport at the moment.
Certainly is. Giedo, how has he changed, do you think? How has his driving style changed over the course of those years? Is it got, would you say, perhaps a bit more cautious, reserved, or maybe he certainly considers perhaps finishing the race, perhaps rather than going for those gaps that maybe aren't there? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's also he's more mature. He has more few years now in the car and more few years in the paddock, more races. At the beginning, when he arrived, he was just full of fire, and every gap he saw, he went for it. But he's also thinking now of the long-term picture. He wants to win, of course, as many races as possible. But when he has a problem or when there's something going on, for example, last year in Silverstone, when the car wasn't working, he still finished in the points. He's thinking about the championship, he's thinking about the long term, and I think that's something that he really grew up from the last few years. But don't forget, when he was fighting Lewis Hamilton for the world title, he really had to go flat out and full for it, because on that time he didn't have the best car, and he still won it, of course. And the last race, it went completely crazy on that time. But then when he got the best car, the paddock, let's say, he's doing an absolutely amazing job. So I think the most what you can say is more mature. On the human side of being, he's the same. I know him for all my life. For me, it didn't change. Of course, a lot more people are interested in Max and they want to have something from him and pictures and what so on. But to me, we always stay the same. He stays 2 feet on the ground. Even the whole family, they're so down to earth. And I think that's his strong point.
I want to get into some questions now from people at home. Adam on Twitter, do you think Max would prefer to be battling wheel-to-wheel competitively with other drivers for victories, or is he happy winning pretty much unchallenged by 20 or 30 seconds every race? I know that didn't happen this weekend, but we can point to a lot of races that did happen over the course of this season. Tom, what's your view? Do you think Max at the front would rather be going wheel-to-wheel more regularly?
I think he's been asked this quite a few times this year, and I think he's said, this is what I've worked towards to be in a dominant car, and it is, of course, it is much easier. As a fan, I would, it's great that he's winning, but I personally would like to see him have more of a battle, because that's, the exciting side that made me support him in the first place. But, he's finally got that car that can dominate the sport. So he knows that everything's running like clockwork, and he can just go in and have not quite a Sunday drive, because the race, the last time, it was an absolutely crazy race, and he still ended up winning. So I do think that, he enjoys that racing side of it, but he's probably I guess you have to put yourself in his shoes, even though it seems a very long time ago now with how dominant he is. He was the one that was watching Mercedes be 20 seconds up the road and no one could catch them, and now he's finally in that position. I think he's enjoying himself.
Do you agree, Guido?
Yeah, fully. I think he prefers to win with 20, 30 seconds every race instead of battling, because it makes life more easy. When you're on the lead, you can control the race, you can control the tires, it's just something more easier. But of course, when the competitors will come more close, I think he's ready to fight.
What are your thoughts? This is a tweet from Jen. What are your thoughts on Max's project to bring sim races into the real thing? Guido, what do you make of, obviously, from my understanding, he spends a lot of time sim racing. Do you think, I have a couple of questions to this. Do you think that is helping him in Formula One? Do you think he is a better driver because he's a good sim racer? And also, what do you make of this project that he's trying to use sim racing to get more drivers into F1?
I think, he becomes a better driver because he drives a lot in simulator. And of course, he also drives in real life. So the combination is perfect. But only if you only do sim racing and then you go to a race car, you don't have the feeling of the G-force, the brake force, and the steering wheel whatsoever. It's completely different. But I think what his project wants to be is like coming in, making a sim driver be really, really fast, and then put him in a race car. And I think he's really going to push for that. And I'm sure when he finds the perfect guy who is also very good in the simulator, put him in a race car and see what happens. And it's not easy. We've seen it, I think, with an English driver. He went also with Gran Turismo in the simulator. Then he went to GT. I think he did the WEC. He did even win a couple of races. So there is an example that it can happen, but it's not easy.
Tom, do you think it's a very separate part of motorsport at the moment, sim racing, and can you see in the future that becoming more and more aligned in order to perhaps become, feeder series is too strong, but identifying talent at sim level? Because ultimately it's a lot cheaper to race a sim than it is to race a Formula One car, right? So if you can identify talent early on, then I guess it could be beneficial for both parties.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously, like Giedo said, it's a very different, not completely different skill, but obviously you don't get that same feeling as being in a real car. But I do think that the more it improves, growing up playing Formula One games on a controller is now very different. You can quite easily have, great sim setup. Some of the sim setups you can get now, it's so realistic, and the games are more realistic, and the simulators and things that you can do at home. So people can now, I think the key thing is the money side of it, that it's cheaper to, even if you buy a very expensive simulator, an iRacing or whatever, is a lot cheaper than going to go-karts, flying around the world and all that side of things. So you can identify maybe a talent there, and then a team or if they get the financial support to grow, they could get into it that side. I think there's a way that could, I don't think it would ever overtake go-karting, but it's another avenue to discover talent, I guess.
Yeah, certainly. Let's move on to another question. Kevin on Twitter: Why is Max so far ahead of the current field? Everyone says a dominant Red Bull car, but yet Perez struggles. It's nothing like Hamilton and Rosberg. Who is going to be the driver to race and challenge Max? Guido, I'll go to you on that one. Who do you think is going to be the one who's going to get closest to Max over the next few years?
It's hard. I think at the moment he's such on a different level than compared to everybody else. Look at all the teammates he had in the last couple of years. He destroyed everybody. And I think I rate Perez quite high. He was my teammate in GP2 that time. I think he did a very good job with all the other drivers he's been racing in Formula One, but he has a tough time. And of course, it's a mental thing sometimes, because, if you have a driver who's always quicker, he's always faster, he always gives you, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths, or even more in qualifying, it just hurts mentally. And I think that's a little bit what's happening, because Perez, I think, is a good guy. He's quick. At the beginning of the year, when he's in the flow, he's doing a wonderful job. But once, he gets the real Max Verstappen next to him, he's struggling. And if you maybe have to pick a couple of drivers who can come close with the same car, with the same team, you speak about Fernando Alonso. Look the performance he did again last weekend. He was really on fire. The experience he's still super fast. Lewis Hamilton, same. Yeah, I think he's rated very high. I mean, been racing in myself from a very young age. I think he's very, very good. And what I rate very high is Lando Norris. I think he is the one, maybe in a few years to become very, very close to Max Verstappen.
Tom, are you getting much traction on kind of a Lando and Max team partnership? Do you see that fans want that? Can you see that happening in the future?
It's a difficult one because, I mean, I think before McLaren's resurgence, I would have said, maybe Lando does need to take a risk and maybe go alongside Max. I personally don't think Lando would beat Max in that team. It's Max's team, Max's dominance, and like Giedo said, like he's just mentally on top of every other driver at the moment because he's got that mentality of never seems to have a day off. He wants to just dominate all the time and never kind of lets that slip. But yeah, Lando now in the McLaren, I think it's better for him to stay and be a team leader because I don't think that I personally don't believe that anyone that would go into that Red Bull alongside Max would beat Max. They'd rely on building another team, like a team around them, a Mercedes, and Aston Martin or whoever, to get on Red Bull's level to challenge for a title. I don't think you can get into that Red Bull team and beat Max because they're just, it's perfect harmony at the moment between man and machine.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. In terms of the future, Giedo, and we've heard it's sort of, I feel like it's gained a bit of traction this year in terms of what Max will do, how long Max will race in Formula One. We know that it's all he's done really, isn't it, since he was 4 or 5 years old. Racing, as you said earlier, it's just been part of his life for so long. Can you see him taking either a break from Formula One and coming back, or can you see him racing in another series and then coming back to Formula One, or maybe just retiring very early on in his career?
Well, it's a tough one. Of course, he's been a long time in Formula One already, and I think he wants to continue. He has a contract until 28. So for sure, he wants to win races, he wants to win championship, but he's not looking for records. And I know personally that he still is a big favor of doing different races, like 24 Hours Le Mans. He really loves to do that. He wants to win it. Daytona, he wants to win. There's another race, 24-hour race in South Africa. It was very, very high on the list that he wants to do. So he wants to explore other things in racing. He wants to see different categories. He wants to race with teammates, and I'm sure he's gonna go and do that. When, of course, we don't know. But I don't see him really saying, look, I'm stopping now in Formula One, I'm going to do something else, and I'm going to go back to Formula One, a bit like Fernando Alonso did. I think when he stops Formula One, he's going to focus on the other projects, and then he will not come back.
In terms of those other projects, I guess that points to the fact he's a racer, right, through and through. He's not just focused on Formula One. He wants to try, Giedo, the other projects as well, because I guess he'll get so much satisfaction. I mean, even racing with Jos, I think that's been spoken about before, hasn't it? How that they would potentially like to race together in the future.
Yeah, of course, and they like to do it, but it depends a little bit of Jos if he's still on it and he wants to do it. I also asked him, can we not do Le Mans together? I mean, we put a full Dutch squad, Jos, Max, and me in it. I think how wonderful would that be? But no, he's still in Formula One, and he has to focus on the next couple of years in Formula One. I think once he's done with that and he's, let's say, ready to do something else, he will do also amazingly well in every other race car he will jump in.
I just want to move on to what Fernando Alonso said after the race yesterday, that it's underestimated sometimes what Max is achieving. I thought that was a really interesting quote, because obviously Fernando understands just how hard it is to win a world championship, to have the longevity that he's had in the sport. Tom, I mean, do you agree with Fernando that perhaps we are, as a F1 community, maybe still underestimating just how impressive what Max is doing is at the moment?
I think so. There's obviously, there will always be that side of Formula One where people try to diminish people's achievements because they've got a very good car. And that's something we saw with even like Lewis Hamilton when he was dominating. There was that area on Twitter where people were like, oh, well, it's just the car. And it's easy to say that, but you have to get to that, when you get that car, you have to deliver. And Max, this season, I don't think that Red Bull is an unbelievable car, but we've seen in the history of Formula One cars that are on that level, and no driver has managed to get this level of dominance. And I think that's something that Max could achieve this year, that I've always felt that, I think you go back to 2020, I think it was, when the Mercedes was absolutely clear, and you can watch old races from that season, and the whole field is lapped by the Mercedes, and there's one driver that's not, and it's Max, and somehow he would challenge Bottas. Sometimes he'd even beat Hamilton in that. And it did make you wonder, geez, how good is this guy going to be if he got a car that good? And we're seeing it play out exactly right now. Because so far, if this carries on, it will be the greatest season we've ever seen in Formula One, because he's had 2 second places and won everything else. It never happened before. So, yeah, he has that. It's easy to say he's got a very good car because he does, but then you can look at his teammate, and also you can compare it to other levels of domination and things in the past. And the reality is that, he's matched a record of 9 wins in a row. You wouldn't put him past beating that. And yeah, his dominance is quite crazy this year, to be honest. And I think it all comes down to what Giedo said earlier about his mental he doesn't want to give anyone a chance. And I think that is why he just can continue to dominate the way he has done.
Well, I know, obviously, Giedo, from a Dutch perspective, I'm sure Max can do no wrong. He is widely celebrated and he's on the front page of every paper when he wins. Do you think globally, internationally, we're still not quite recognising, like Fernando says, that we're still not quite recognising the achievements of what Verstappen has achieved?
I don't know. I think he it is, because all the internet sites, all the podcasts, all the websites, all the newspapers, they truly think very, very high of Max Verstappen. But I think the other side, because he's very down to earth, he still can have a little bit of a normal life. I think Lewis is a little bit more outgoing, with go to all the events where you have the things where on the VIP, on the red carpet, show, whatever. I think Max, he only wants to race and wants to have fun with his family and with his friends, and then goes to a race and then back home, and that's it. And I think that's a little bit of different way. But as a driver, I think everybody has huge respect for him. Even Fernando Alonso saying that last weekend. And that's nice to see, and I think that's all what he cares about.
All right, perfect. Just a couple of questions then, really on Monza this week, and we know that Max is going to go for 10 in a row. Giedo, your thoughts then on how possible that is at the Italian Grand Prix this weekend. Do you think we will be, in a week's time, looking back and saying, wow, we've now got a new record-breaking Max Verstappen?
100%. Because for me, I think he's just on fire. I think that car will do really well in that race. I guess Ferrari will come close as well, with Leclerc being always quick there. I think the Ferrari, they have like a bit of a pressure from all the fans and all the Ferrari, all the tifosi, so they have to do well. I think that car is still quick on a straight line, the Ferraris, so they will battle Max Verstappen. But on the other hand, I think Max will take pole position, win the race, and will have a new record. But the question is actually how many more races he's going to win. Maybe it goes up to 12, 13, 14. It can happen, huh?
Yeah, wow. I mean, if we go up to those numbers, it'll be extraordinary. Tom, just final word from you really on actually Ferrari at Monza, because obviously we missed Imola, so this is the first time Ferrari are sort of returning to home turf this year. Not been a great season for them. It's been up and down, and it wasn't a great race in Zandvoort for them. So, what do you think the expectations are going to be like of the Tifosi this week, and how are they going to manage that? Because, as I say, the car doesn't look as good as it should.
Yeah, it's a strange one with Ferrari, because last year they were, making mistakes and and having those issues, but they were at least out the front challenging. You know, they could get wins and things like that and podiums, whereas now the expectation, I guess, is a lot lower because they're battling for, you know, the podium, if that, sometimes 4th, 5th, 6th. So I don't think there'll always be pressure on Ferrari at Monza to deliver, but I don't think there'll be the huge expectation for them to win like maybe we saw last year because the car was better. I think a lot of people, unsurprisingly, will expect Max to win the race, but I think, you know, Ferrari to maybe get on the podium would be a great result for them, really.
Yeah, well, we will certainly see what happens. Giedo and Tom, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. We will be back next Tuesday to look back on the Italian Grand Prix. I hope you can join us then. Bye for now.